Park Geun-hye administration has been promoting growth and welfare as a way to boost the economy. But can these conflicting engines coexist, and what is the ideal way to chase two hares at once? To help us answer that question, we are joined by the former president of Finland, Tarja Halonen.
As president, Tarja Halonen is the one who led the charge in transforming Finland into an advanced welfare nation. During her 2 terms in office, Finland was ranked as one of the world's least corrupt countries, the most competitive nation, and as the country with the best education system. Halonen got the nickname Moomin Mama because of her warm and friendly image. Moomin Mama is a character in the Moomin series of books. She is a beloved character in Finland who always takes care of people around her. We meet Tarja Halonen, the former president of Finland, who achieved national consensus on the nation's welfare policies.
President Halonen, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us today. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure for me.
You were the first female president of Finland. You had approval ratings of over 80%. I do wonder, watching the recent events here in Korea with our first female president, Park Geun-hye, what your impressions were from afar.
So I feel a little bit responsible for this, because it seemed to be so that when people notice in different countries that having a female president, it's not a catastrophe for the country. So I have seen the same phenomenon in Brazil, in Chile, now here, and I hope so that your people will be as satisfied as in Finland. I mean that you can once vote for a woman, but you don't do 2 times the same mistake without knowing what you are doing. I think so that it's a symbol how the development is going in the country. Of course, we have to compare it with other indicators. So, for instance, we have in Finland some of the different issues in women's empowerment. We gave, as the first country in the world, full political rights, both for the women and men at the same time. And then we have had, for instance, women in the government of the country since 1920s. And we have just now, we have over 40%, almost 50% women also in the parliament, which of course makes a difference. But anyway, I think all women in the leadership in different sectors of the society might make a role model, whether these women want or not. But I remember when I became a president, so little girls said, whoa, I want to become also. And I had the difficulties to convince the little boys that, okay, you can become also a president if you want one day.
Yeah. Focusing more attention and more money on welfare is going to take a bite out of that growth. You're saying not necessarily the case there, not at all.
I think that we have noticed in all countries already that the growth, economic growth as such, it doesn't make welfare or it doesn't make people happier if the growth is jobless. The growth, what we have all agreed in Rio, together in UN, it's inclusive, socially, with the social justice, such kind of the growth, because then this means only, very simply if we put in normal words, is that this growth should also contain jobs, because jobs in a way it's a security for your economical welfare. The second, it also respects your dignity, because we are not the children which could just cut the fruits, but we want also to be part of this process. And that's global phenomenon. It's not just for you in Korea, for us in Finland who are hard workers, very, very much ethics for the work, but it seems to be a global phenomenon. And in that way, welfare society gives more jobs in educational sector, health sector, social sector. Think your daycare, think of the senior citizens services. So don't think that it's expenses. It's investing, and it will give also back.
Let me touch on another concern in Korea here, that being taxation. People are afraid that their taxes are going to go up in order to pay for these things. Is it possible, or rather impossible, I guess, to sort of promote these social welfare policies without doing that, without raising taxes?
We always need taxation. Just recently, when I left Finland, coming to Korea, we had the meetings, important meetings of our national government, and we have the 4 years period term for the parliament. And normally, when we have a broad coalition government, so they have to think first the program for the government, and then they check it normally yearly, but also in the middle, and we are just now in this. And in order to encourage enterprises, so our government proposed that they could decrease the corporation taxation quite strongly, so that it will be in the future only 20%, which is very low in Europe. So how they put the taxation? They took a sugar, alcohol, they took some other such kind, cigarettes, and also energy, which is directly, almost like a directive from the Rio Protocol for the sustainable development. So I don't say that you can be without taxation, but I say that you should anyway think the taxation if you want to get the sustainable development. So I will say that you will get more than what you invest. And it's not only me or my beliefs, it's also, you can see it in different documents of economic research institutes, UN, and so. And if you compare the Nordic countries, not only Finland, but other Nordic countries internationally, so we don't do so poorly.
With all of this in mind, Korea is in a rather interesting spot because we have a population where 80% actually enter college, a great majority of them graduate from college, yet the youth unemployment rate in this country is at around 9%. People are having a very hard time finding jobs. When you look at the situation in Korea, I'm curious what you see and what sort of solution there might be to all of this, to these people who are struggling.
Yes, one thing, what's our own mind, how we think. Whether we think that all those who are not entered to university, that they are losers. And this is wrong. We need still the carpenters, we need a lot of people who are doing more or less also with their hands. But they need also brains nowadays. So in that way, I underline the fact it has to be open-ended education so that whatever you have been now, you can do another thing tomorrow. And what I think also is that you could perhaps study that whether it would be useful to use the university degree in some such kind of the jobs or professions what you haven't thought earlier. I think it's natural to understand that all teachers should have a university degree, but also when I spoke about the preschool education teachers, the kindergarten teachers, in Finland they have also the university degree. In police, for instance, and in security, they have also the degree, a vocational degree, which is something what internationally we could say that it's a Royal University degree. So don't overestimate the importance of the universities, or at least think that the young ones, when they come out of the university, they should be prepared to do something else what they daddies and mothers did. So not only the lawyers and teachers and professors in that way, but also different kind of the jobs. And then also that they can also be encouraged to create their own jobs by themselves. That has been normal for instance, my own profession originally was a lawyer. So, but at least in Finland, I have heard that you here face the same fact that the young ones want to be in different sectors of the arts. So those who are working in the arts, they are not civil servants. They should be a little bit entrepreneur-minded people, that they can create what's needed. And so we have a lot of different kind of systems to combine these. You know that Nokia is from Finland. So, and now it was the biggest, and now it's still the very big one. But when they cut some branches away, we helped by the state these people to make a new enterprises. And now we have a good result of the children in that way, starting from the Angry Birds, if you are playing, and many other issues. And in that way, we always should see that how to be flexible. But people never get too much education, but they can get the too narrow education.
Adapting with the times.
Yes, yes.
President Halonen, we do appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much for your interest.
The youth unemployment rate here in Korea represents an early challenge for President Park Geun-hye, who will be looked upon to bring it down. To navigate through the challenges, we are joined by a leading mind in the European labor market, Guenther Schmid.
Guenther Schmid, a leading mind of the European labor market. Dr. Schmid was awarded an honorary doctorate degree by the University of Aalborg in Denmark, being credited with his efforts to improve the European labor market. We meet Guenther Schmid to discuss combating youth unemployment amid an era of low growth.
Mr. Schmid, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. I don't know if you are familiar with this thing called the Sampo Generation here in Korea, but it refers to Koreans in their 20s and 30s who are basically losing an interest in dating or getting married or having children, basically due to financial constraints. When you hear this as an economist, I imagine it is a bit disconcerting. What do you think about when you hear this, this term here being used in Korea?
I haven't heard it, but it reminds me to another term we use in Europe, which is a generation precarious generation, which refers to young people in the age of 20 to 30 who have no secure job perspective, but just precarious jobs or temporary jobs, part-time jobs, jobs with very low wages or even no jobs, so that the youth unemployment rate in Europe increased dramatically. We have a level of about 22% youth unemployment in Europe, which is tremendous. And we have also many youth in Europe which are dropping out in a way which we call the people not in education, not in employment, and not in training. And we have 5 million unemployed people in Europe and additional 2 million people which are not in employment, not in education training. This may be something like what you refer to this generation.
I guess the question then would be, what do you do when you're faced with a challenge like that? You know, Europe is consisting of 27 countries. All countries are facing different problems, and some countries have not really big problems in youth unemployment. For instance, Germany or Austria, we have an unemployment rate for youth of 7 to 8%. But we have countries like Greece, like Spain, with a youth unemployment rate of 55%, imagine. So there's tremendous differences, and so the countries are fighting in a different way. But the European Commission felt responsible to introduce and recommend for all governments a European Youth Guarantee, which means all governments should provide for every young people with unemployment more than 4 months a job guarantee or a guarantee for an education in some way. And this is now starting, this process, and this is quite interesting. And the European Commission also allocated some money, 6 billion euro, especially provided for countries with tremendous high unemployment rate. When you look at Korea, and I know you have taken different roles in advising different parts of the segments of government here, but when you look at the unique situation that Korea is in, what do you see as being the biggest problem, the biggest obstacle as it pertains to youth unemployment?
I think the biggest problem is the polarization of the labor market in Korea. The polarization which a labor market for core workers with safe jobs, with good wages and high employment protection. And the labor market in Korea, about 1/3 is in the informal sector, in the sector with very low wages, and which do not provide any perspective for young people. And I think Korea probably should do something against this polarization of the labor market. For instance, to some extent, to make employment protection for core workers depending that they also adjust to the labor market in form of training or in form of work sharing. Work sharing is one of the most important policy instruments in Germany to make the labor market internally flexible and to allow much more young people to enter the labor market. If you reduce the working time, for instance, in the recession, and give unemployment benefits, partial unemployment benefits for the people reducing the working time, so you can maintain the level of employment, and also employers still can recruit new jobs and new people in the labor market here. This would be one thing. I think another thing is, would be quite important. As far as I know, the situation in Korea, there's a lack of a basic universal income security system for all people. You have a safety net for core workers, unemployment or employment insurance, but not for all workers. And this was one of the most important elements of the German labor market reforms, to have established a universal security system for all employable people. So even if you do not get a job, you have at least a basic minimum income, and you are included into the active labor market policy which is providing you with job offers, which is helping you to get new jobs, which is training you on the job. The one most important thing is, human capital formation is not only formal in the schools, but a lot of real human capital formation and social capital formation happens on the job. And everything one should do, I think, is work first, strategy, and then helping people to get a career within a firm, an enterprise, or a company.
You brought up something that I think is interesting, and I wonder if it might work in Korea, this idea of this midi job, which is something that you just touched on, right? Is that something that you would see maybe perhaps working here in Korea?
I'm not so sure, because you have already a very, so to speak, a developed informal labor market with low-paid jobs. This is a very particular element in the German labor market, which is very uncommon, very particular and very specific. Yes, we have a lot of mini jobs, which are good, I think, for instance, for students who are full-time students but would like to earn some little money in addition without paying taxes and things like that. It's good for elderly people who have already a basic pension. But it's, of course, it's also providing for a lot of people a way to a bridge into the labor market. Yes, many temporary workers finally end after 3 or 5 years in a permanent job here. But we went too far a little bit, so I would not necessarily recommend this element for the Korean labor market. I'm not so sure, but the more important point for Korea is, I think, to make sure that people in temporary jobs, the many people in temporary jobs, have as a perspective for a permanent job somehow, through training, or for also by some kind of regulations that do not allow employers or companies to outsource a lot of jobs to this kind of informal labor market with low social security. So there's some need of regulation, I would say, to restrict this big informal and precarious labor market.
Tell us a little bit about the differing mindsets between the U.S. and the European model, which you come from. Tell us sort of the source of that.
Of course, Thomas Sergeant, as an American, is much more market-oriented. And I think two most important elements of our debate were differences were that Americans see the labor market as a market, unemployment as frictional unemployment, which means it's a way to find a new job. And if young people need 8 or 10 times to find a new job, and in the meantime they are shortly unemployed, it doesn't matter. Unemployment in some way is a solution for the Americans to find the good jobs finally. So frictional unemployment. And we see in Europe this more as a structural problem. Because the structural problem, especially a lack of good coordination between the education system and the labor market.
And this particular problem is one that is very familiar to us here in Korea. You have a very high percentage of the population graduating from college, a high percentage of them saturating the market, essentially, trying to get those good, high-paying jobs. They can't find them, so they continue to sort of build up their specifications, as they call it here, and going back to vocational schools and things like that. When you're in a situation like that and you're looking at the problem as it stands now in Korea, I guess the question is, what do you do specifically? What could the Korean government do tomorrow or next month to sort of change the tide here? Is there any solution out there that really makes sense to you?
You can't change it from one day to the other. It's impossible, I think. But you can change the direction, of course, in a way that you provide these young people with more opportunities to learn on the job, which I call the dual learning system. In Germany, for instance, we are providing also for the university level cooperative universities in which you have get a contract with an employer, and you get money, you earn a wage, but at the same time you work with the company 3 months, and the other 3 months you go to the university and study. This, which provides you with both with practical experiences and also the culture of working, for instance, which is very important, I think, which I call human capital, social capital development by building networks here. You know, at the same time, you can follow your aspirations and to get a university degree. And I think in this direction, Korea can move. It moved already by establishing the so-called Meisterschulen. There are already 27 Meisterschulen, according to the apprenticeship model in Germany, where people have at the same time a contract with an employer and go to the Meisterschulen to learn a vocation, an occupation. And this is very important to provide the people with both, with really work experiences and with the possibility of striving up. And I think this is really a big problem in Korea, that Korea developed in a dramatic, fantastic way. It's now a top leader in the education system. And we really, in a way, admire this, but I think it went too far. I read, for instance, a survey that 92% of the parents wish their child to have a high university degree, 92%. You know, this system can't work. And you need much more on the training education at the middle level, which is also much more interesting for the medium and small firms who need these kind of skills. And I've heard that you have a paradox situation, you have unemployment, but you have at the same time a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises look for qualified people. And so in this direction, I think you should do something.
Guenther Schmid, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us today. We appreciate it.
Not at all. It was a pleasure.